We are here today for the third talk on the cybersecurity theme by Ms. Annapurna and Professor Srinivas Vivek. Today's session chair will be Professor Aarti, who is a DST Inspire faculty fellow at IIIT Bangalore since January 2019. She has received her MTech and PhD degrees from the Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Bombay in January 2017 and was a postdoctoral researcher in Informatics Research Institute of Toulouse, France from May 2017 to January 2019. Her areas of research interest broadly come under error correcting codes, cyclic codes, LDBC codes, information theory, and cryptography based on error correcting codes. So over to you, Professor Aarti.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Samvaad-Talk series organized by IIIT Bangalore. And it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Professor Srinivas Vivek and his PhD student, Annapurna Valiveti. Dr. Srinivas Vivek is currently an assistant professor at IIIT Bangalore. Previously, he was a postdoctoral researcher in the cryptography group at the University of Bristol, UK. He has obtained his doctoral, master's, and bachelor's degrees from the University of Luxembourg, IISc Bangalore, and NIT Surathkal, respectively. He is a recipient of the DST Inspire Faculty Award given by the Government of India. His research interests are in the design, analysis, and implementation of countermeasures against side channel attacks and homographic encryption schemes. His PhD student Annapurna Valiveti is currently in her third year. She is currently working on efficient side channel attack countermeasures and formal analysis of the security of masking schemes. The title of the today's talk is Time Memory Trade-Offs for Side Channel Resistant Cryptographic Implementations. And this is the third talk in the series with the theme cybersecurity. Today's talk is about utilizing masking techniques for preventing side channel attacks. In side channel attacks, the side information about a system, such as power consumption, electromagnetic radiations, is utilized for cryptanalysis. And the masking techniques that we'll be discussing today's talk provide an efficient way to prevent such attacks. Without any further delay, I would like to request Professor Vivek and Annapurna to take the stage. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Arti, for the kind introduction, and to Professors Jaya Nair and Amrita Mishra for coordinating this wonderful series. So it's my pleasure to be speaking here. Right. So today is really Annapurna's show. So, but I thought that I should give a couple of minutes of introduction. Okay. So this topic broadly belongs to the theme of crypto engineering, where the focus is on efficient and secure implementations of cryptographic primitives. So we know that efficiency is very important, right? And many times clever engineering tricks can bring in a lot of efficiency improvement, which otherwise would have taken a lot of theoretical effort, or it may not have been possible. Okay, so there's no need to really emphasize the importance of efficient implementation, but in the crypto context, it also turns out that they need to be secure. Okay, so whole topic revolves around this. Next slide, please, Anna. Okay, so this is the brief outline of the talk. So I'll just briefly tell what are side channel attacks. Those are basically a class of implementation-based attacks that exploit the physical phenomenon and then try to they mount an attack on the crypto system, and then goal is typically to recover the secret key. Okay, so and then we'll briefly discuss about the countermeasures and then present our latest works in a particular class of countermeasures called masking, particularly the table-based masking. So there we try to study the time memory trade-off and also solve a major open problem in this area where we try to make the memory requirement independent. So for the first paper appeared last year at CHESS, the Cryptographic Hardware and Embedded Systems Journal. And then now the second paper is going to appear at CHES 2021, and it will be presented in September. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, we know this typical scenario, where two people, say Alice and Bob, they want to securely communicate, okay, and in the presence of an eavesdropper Eve. Okay, so we are aware of, and we are aware of the basic requirements such as confidentiality of the communication, where the Eve should not be able to, even if he or she intercepts the messages, should not be able to recover should not be able to decipher or deduce anything about the underlying plain text. Okay, so that was actually communicated. Okay, and then another very important requirement is integrity. So even if the eavesdropper tries to do any manipulation of the communicated messages, it should be detected, and now, if possible, it should also be recovered. So these are two fundamental objectives of any secure communication. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now the world is in a cell phone, right? So everything's happened. So there's a lot of crypto that's being used that runs, the implementations run in a mobile phone. Okay, so yeah, next slide, please. So now, uh, maybe about 3 decades ago, then it was observed that the physical phenomenon that accompanies any execution of any algorithm, okay, in particular any crypto implementation, security implementation, so it creates measurable effects, right? We know that, for instance, the amount of time it takes for a process to execute, or the amount of power it consumes, or the amount of electromagnetic emanation it produces, okay, and even acoustics. Okay, so the amount of sound it creates. Okay, so these are all physical phenomenon. So and then so in the crypto community, it was these attacks are referred to as side channel attacks, because they're not really the mainstream mathematical attacks that was previously considered, right? So then any so any attack that makes use of these leakages are called side channel attack. And this exploiting physical phenomenon uh, to attack any system, it's not really that something that was discovered in the mid 90s, okay, or for the first time, right? Or it was invented for the first time. So even like several decades ago during World War, there are instances how the communications were hacked using the physical phenomena. Okay, but in the crypto community, the credit goes to Paul Cocker. He was a biology student, and then during his internship, he was investigating security, the implementation, the timings, the amount of time it takes for public key algorithms like RSA, right? And then he came up with this timing attacks, where he observed that so looking at just the amount of time it consumes, those who are those who are conversant with RSA, they know that the decryption process involves, depending on the secret bit at the given position, it involves either square or square and multiply. So the extra amount of computations take the more time, right? So if you look at the time profile, then one can easily recover the key. Okay? So this was a breakthrough work, and then so it led to the creation of this, or it gave a momentum to the growth of the crypto engineering community. Okay? So next slide, please. So secure algorithms, they need secure implementation, efficient and secure. So if you take any implementation, so we are worried about the formal correctness, right? We do formal verification. So if there is a bug, there's a bug, we need to fix it. Okay, but in the case of crypto algorithms, security algorithms, it turns out that a bug, it's not just an erroneous output, but that erroneous output can also be disastrous. Okay, and then of course all this implementations should also be shielded against the side channel leakages. Next slide. Okay. So how does typical side channel attack work? Okay. So let me give an example of a power attack. Okay. Suppose it's a bank card. Assume it's a bank card, and suppose so it has a pin, and then it's encrypted. So suppose when you present that card in front of a card terminal, the pin and of course you need to present your pin. Okay, that's the one you are going to key in using the keypad, and then it's going to be checked with the pin that was stored in the encrypted format inside the bank card. Okay, so for that some decryption is happening. Okay, so now so there is a key, so there's an input. Okay, and then now the adversary, what it will do is will try to measure the amount of time it takes, or okay, in the case here it can be power consumption. Okay, and then of course so okay, so the slide says about the encrypted text, but the same thing would also work for the decrypted text. You get the decrypted text, and then adversary will see if look at the power consumption, and then so that's like a signature of an execution. So then many times with just a single trace it can try to break it, but now, and the problem is these traces are typically noisy. Okay, we don't get the intermediate values just like that. Okay, and then but then there are also more clever statistical techniques where you take several measurements. For example, assume that the bank card is stolen, then you have a choice to, so you can try to do many measurements and then average out the noise and do, so there are many clever techniques, and the bouquet of technique is ever increasing by the day. So all this it can do, and it can possibly inject fault attacks. It can try to open the packaging and then try to flip a bit, and then these things can be really disastrous. And typical goal is the key recovery. So what we need to really know is, so it's crypto algorithm is not just a black box. Okay, something went in, something came out, the plain text went in, the decrypted, encrypted, the cipher text came out, or the cipher text went in, or decrypted plain text out. It's not just that. So now the adversary can start seeing intermediate variables. Okay, again, how it can possibly get some information about the intermediate variables is by looking into the power consumption. So because all this, say for instance, the power consumption is actually dependent on the actual computation done, and also the value of the intermediate variable. For instance, on a memory bus line, okay, assume after every operation it's reset to 0, and depending on suppose you want to communicate, say a bit with say all a byte with all the bits set. Okay, so then you need to flip, right? And 0 1, we know that it's the voltage levels, right? So if every bit needs to flip from 0 to 1, so then it's going to consume the amount of power that's proportional to the number of bits flipped. Okay? So if every bit flips, so then it will consume the highest amount of power. So, and it also turns out that Hamming weight or Hamming distance can be a good model for the power consumption. Okay, so this is how it can get some information about intermediate variables, and these things can help an adversary to mount an attack on the system. So next slide, please. And there are very popular attacks. Probably you would have heard about Spectre and Meltdown attacks. So on Intel SGX, where the adversary could observe the cache access pattern, and this cache hit and miss, it was exploited to get some information about the secret key, because that's a very famous. So even the flash reload, there are cache side channel attacks. And of course, timing attacks and power analytics are like they're a serious threat because it's quite easy to mount. Okay? And that is the topic of this talk. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, maybe so I presented very briefly at an abstract level how okay, what is a side channel leakage or side channel attack? Okay, and then now Annapurna will take over on the countermeasures. Over to you, Annapurna.
Thank you, sir. So thanks for the introduction, sir. Essentially, what's happening here is the adversary is able to observe the leakage from the device. So somehow we want to make the leakage obtained by the adversary useless for him, so that we can still go back to the black box security of the crypto algorithm. So how we are going to achieve this leakage independent is we'll induce some randomness into the computation, so that while observing the leakage from the device, the adversary essentially will get only the random values. How we are going to achieve this, how we are going to induce the randomness into the computation is one way is, it's a very popular way of inducing the randomness is masking, where we are going to divide the secret into shares. You would have heard this in the previous talks also, secret sharing. So we'll be dividing the secret, crypto secret into n shares, say, and out of n shares, n minus one of them is nothing but uniform random values. And final, because we want the correctness to hold, one last value will be computed using the secret and this n minus one shares. So that is essentially the secret sharing part. And here we refer to T as a masking order, like how many values, intermediate values the adversary can get, still we can maintain the secrecy. So that is nothing but the masking order. So in this talk, we'll essentially focus on the, of course, as Prof mentioned, there are cache side channel attacks and the timing side channel attacks, but the countermeasures in this talk we are mentioning are related to the power analysis attacks. How about the security? This is the adversary model, where the adversary can get the plain text ciphertext combinations along with the leakage from the device, the intermediate variables from the device. What is the security? How can we say that some implementation is secure? So this is a study initiated by Isha et al. In Crypto 2003 by a probing model, where we'll say that even if the adversary can get T intermediate variables, he will not be able to extract any information about the secret. It's an informal definition, but essentially this is what we want to achieve. Even if the adversary is able to get the knowledge of T variables, he should not be able to deduce the secret. But at the low level, we are talking about the leakage from the device, where the adversary can obtain the leakage from the device. So the probing model is more like a theoretical model, and the noisy values is what we are obtaining in practice. So is it that what we are trying to say, are these two things related? Whatever we want to prove in the probing leakage model and whatever is happening at the reality, at the device level, these things related? Yes, they are related. So the Duck et al. In 2014, they proved a reduction saying that the countermeasure proved in T-probing security is secure in the real-world noisy leakage model as well. So essentially, the proving the security of the countermeasure in T-probing model will guarantee the implementation to be secure against the side channel attacks. So there are even, interestingly, there are various notions. There is an improvement in the probing leakage model over the years. When Isha et al. Introduced it in 2003, the number of, to achieve the security against Tth order, we want the number of shares to be 2T plus 1. And further it is improved, it is enhanced, the bound is improved by Rivon et al. In 2010, where the we just need the number of shares to be T plus 1, which is optimal. We have to defend against Tth order attacks, we want the number of shares to be just T plus 1. And further, we have a notion of compositional probing security. Here you can clearly see that the bound, there is no improvement in bound. We already achieved the optimal bound in the previous notion itself. But what exactly this compositional notion, why it has a significance? I'll just try to illustrate an example. So when I say masking, each and every operation will be getting an encoding of n shares, and it will output an encoding of n shares. So essentially, there will be many functions which we'll be using to implement like a crypto algorithm. So can we say that if each of these individual entities are T-probing secure, can we say that the complete implementation, the overall implementation is still T-probing secure? It turns out that this is not possible with these two prior notions of probing security, and this is achieved using the compositional notion in 2016. So this is a breakthrough work which makes the cryptographic proofs in the probing model more elegant. So coming to a concrete instance of this crypto algorithm, we'll be focusing on the block ciphers. For instance, like AES, DES, or present, something like that. So how exactly we'll transform the block ciphers using this masking technique. So when I want to convert the block ciphers using the masking technique, there are two major operations of a block cipher: the linear layers and the nonlinear layers. So the linear layers essentially will be whenever the encoded input is given to the linear layers, each and the function can be applied on the individual shares. So this is as simple. The linear layers are usually, it holds the probing security will hold for the linear layers. When it comes to the nonlinear layers, which is nothing but S box for the block ciphers, so there may be a mix of shares happening somewhere in the computation. So there should be attention given while implementing this nonlinear layers, especially the security. Probing security should be taken care while implementing the nonlinear layers. So what are the countermeasures from this past 25 years of history to implement the S-box, the nonlinear layers of the block cipher? Are nothing but there are two sort of a broader categories. One is the circuit based and the other one is the lookup table based. Circuit based, where we'll be representing the circuit using AND and XORs. And the lookup table based, we'll be constructing the randomized lookup table to securely implement the S-box. So like any other algorithm, the crypto algorithm also depends on the time and memory. To implement a crypto algorithm efficiently, there are time and memory trade-offs. And there is a third important dimension which adds the security, is nothing but the randomness. So to implement an algorithm efficiently, we need to take care of the trade-offs between this so that we can fine-tune these three dimensions depending on the hardware device and the time it takes. Particularly, if you want to look at these trade-offs for the circuit-based and the lookup table-based implementations, for circuit-based implementations, the RAM memory, it almost requires a constant amount of RAM memory. Whereas the lookup table-based, because we want to store the randomized lookup table in the RAM, so this requires heavy RAM memory. As Prof mentioned, this is one unsolved problem over the years where we require some order of KBs and MBs of memory to store the randomized lookup tables. Whereas the advantages of lookup table based, these tables can be pre-processed because, as I mentioned, n-1 shares can be chosen independently of the secret before you entering your PIN in the card reader. So there is a choice of pre-processing these lookup tables, whereas circuit-based, everything happens after you insert your secret. So there is no scope for pre-processing when it comes to circuit-based, and there will be a choice of pre-processing for lookup tables. And it impacts the online execution time, since majority of the computation can be pre-processed. The lookup table based essentially is a constant lookup during the online execution, and circuit based schemes, most of the execution happens, all the execution happens over the online. And both these implementations, because they want to provide security, both these implementations require a true randomness with high entropy to secure implementations. So we want to sort of combine best of both these worlds. Whereas the lookup table based, clearly we can see that it is suffering from RAM memory. So somehow if we can achieve sort of a constant memory, not growing with your security order. So that will give us a scope to implement the lookup table based and achieve and very efficient online execution time. As I mentioned, because we are getting the n encoded input, n shares encoded input, the lookup table, there will be n number of columns. And suppose if the lookup table is taking a k bit input, then there are 2 power k possible combinations. So the lookup table is nothing but a dimension of 2 power k cross n table. So if I want to reduce the memory requirement, there are like two possibilities. Either I can vertically compress the table or horizontally compress the table. But I would like to mention it has to be done in a secure way. So we explored the vertical compression where we can reduce the number of rows in the lookup table. The columns remain as it is. So this is our first work, which is published at Just 20 last year. And essentially the idea is, before going to the idea, I just want to mention the results we achieved. For SBox, we just need 59 bits to store the entire SBox table. And this is a second order scheme, meaning the input is divided into 3 shares. And we require for the complete AES execution, we just need almost less than factor of 4 memory to store the tables. And the randomness requirement particularly is only 19 bits of true randomness we need to implement the scheme. So we sort of achieve the balance of reducing the memory required to store the lookup table. So how we achieve this? As you mentioned, the table-based implementations have the offline phase where we can pre-process the tables, and the generation of randomness, and we divided the table into 2 parts, 2 halves sort of. So one is T1 and one is T2, the offline table and the online table. So the whatever computation that can be done during the offline phase, we made it in the table T1, which is of lesser size compared to this 2 power k cross n. And there will be another table which will take this as input, and further it will output the shares. So essentially this is the idea. So still there is a computation of T2 involved in the online phase, but it achieved almost factor of 4 improvement over the state of art for second order schemes. So why I'm saying it is a second order scheme? Why cannot I say that something like any order? Why cannot I extend it to any order? It turns out that the techniques in this particular setting, we require more primitives to extend it for higher orders. So before that, why even we need to bother about, why even somebody has to bother about the higher order implementations? So the motivation for higher order is in Chari et al. Demonstrated that the complexity of mounting the side channel attack increases exponentially with the security order. The more the value of T, the more efforts are required by the adversary to mount the ST attack. So this masking order will act as a sound security parameter to implement the, it provides a next level of defense. Higher order schemes provide next level of defense to counter against SEA. So as I mentioned, the previous scheme, it is confined to second order, and we want to extend the table compression to higher orders as well. So before looking into that higher order compression, are there any higher order table-based schemes present? So there is one scheme for higher order lookup tables in Eurocrypt 2014. So essentially this requires, as I mentioned, it requires the table to be of dimensions 2 power k cross n. And if I specifically say that, to give the concrete instantiation, for a 10th order secure AES implementation, we just require 440 KB of RAM memory for one single AES execution. So this is the memory we require for one single AES execution, which may be impractical for resource constrained devices if I talk about something like 256 KB device or something like that. So we just want to make sure the higher order schemes should be able to run on a resource constrained device. We want to make it practical. So that is the motivation. And pictorially, this is nothing but the scheme. I just, no, this is nothing but a flow chart of the Caron's 2014 scheme, where the table will have n columns and it has 2 power k rows. And these are nothing but the pre-processing phase, where the shift and refresh is what we call the steps of the pre-processing. And finally, the output encoding can be obtained using this final lookup. So this is what Caron's 14 scheme. So what we want to achieve is, we want to make this table only a single column. We don't want to make it n columns. We want to make it a single column. How is it possible? Because we always we always insist that it should be secure. The reason why we have an n input encoding is to make it secure. But now what I say is we want to make it a single column. Is it really feasible what I'm saying? So the idea to make it a single column is to replace the randomness required for whatever the true random values required for the implementation. Essentially, we are generating it from a PRG, a pseudo-random generator. But what I'm talking is memory. So what is the relation between randomness reduction and memory? What we'll do is, since PRG is a deterministic algorithm, we'll compute the outputs of the PRG on the fly. We'll not store the outputs. The remaining n-1 columns of the table are to store the outputs of the PRG. So what we'll do is, we'll not store that part. We'll compute whenever required, we'll compute the PRG outputs on the fly. So essentially, we can only store the first column. We can save the space for the remaining n-1 columns, which is nothing but n-1 times 2 power k. So is it that simple? Is it like, can we really say that just compute it on the fly and we can still maintain the correctness of the algorithm? So these are nothing but the challenges which we faced while suggesting this algorithm. Clearly, there is a dependency of the table. Whatever the output of, I mentioned, shift and refresh are the steps which has to be done for n-1 steps. So there is a dependency among the output from step I to step I plus 1. Whatever the output of step I, the table, it should be given to the step I plus 1. But we are not storing that n-1 columns. So there should be a recomputation involved. As I mentioned, PRG is a deterministic function. So there should be a recomputation of these n-1 columns while giving it for the next step. And we don't want to make this recomputation costly. We want to minimize the cost of this recomputation, and we want to have we should not have an impact on the online execution time. So that should be taken care. And the other thing is, I mentioned that true randomness, what we are having as part of the implementation, we are generating from a PRG. So is it possible the adversary can observe the PRG implementation as well? Because that is also part of the implementation. So he can observe the PRG implementation as well. And we want the PRG also to be probing secure. And we can also consider there may be some devices which have a faster TRNG, faster inbuilt TRNG. So we will look at the device and obtain the trade-offs. If at all during the online computation, we can take more randomness from the device, and we can avoid the PRG construction if at all if it is expensive. So we even consider the trade-offs during the online execution time as well. So a small intro to the PRG constructions, whatever I mentioned, the probing secure PRG constructions. So what we have is robust and multi-PRG constructions from the literature, and we even considered the trade-offs with respect to the robust and multi-PRG construction, whichever works more efficient on the device. So there are some parameters that has to be considered while implementing this robust and multi-PRG constructions. So we have I'll skip the details with respect to this PRG constructions for now. And this is essentially the scheme now from whatever scheme we considered from Karun's 2014 and whatever our scheme, whatever we suggested right now. You can clearly see that the table essentially is only one single column. It's not no more n column table. It's only one single column table. And the random values are generated from a PRG. So this part will go into the pre-processing. Whatever the PRG computation and the shift and refresh part will go into the offline computation pre-processing phase, and only the lookup and the final output will be the online. So essentially, we have a very efficient online execution time. So these are the numbers which will demonstrate how much how many true random values we require for the implementation, and how efficient is the time required to generate 1 unit of randomness from the PRG for the robust and multi-PRG constructions. It turns out that the multi-PRG construction works efficient compared to the robust PRG construction. So these are some asymptotic complexities regarding that. And clearly you can see that the RAM required for the implementation is only for the first column we need 2 power k, store the first column of the table, And we need to store the input to the PRG seed, whatever the seed to the PRG, we need to store that values as well. So these are the asymptotic complexities. And if we talk about the concrete numbers, like what orders we implemented on the device, as I mentioned previously, it's impossible to run the 10th order scheme on a 256 KB device, the initial scheme from 2014. So essentially we achieved that. Results are quite interesting, and we just need 40 KB. As you can clearly see that there is almost a constant growth in the memory required to implement the scheme. We just need 10th order implementation, we just need 41 KB roughly of memory. And the online execution time, it took around 4 million clock cycles, which is comparable to the state-of-the-art implementations. And I just want to give the overall picture of this side channel research, like where we fit in, whatever our work, where we fit into the bigger picture. So as Prof mentioned, it all started with the attacks, side channel attacks, and there is a recent addition of attacks also as Spectre Meltdown and flush and reload. There are many attacks which are adding up, and there are equally the countermeasures also are being proposed. There is a refinement on the countermeasures, and very recently there is a new direction into this cryptography, which we call as white box cryptography. If you remember the adversarial model which we refer to, the adversary can only observe the input plain text and the output ciphertext, and he can observe the leakage from the device. He cannot have the control over the algorithm execution. But white box cryptography, what it does is, it will give the complete algorithm. The key will be embedded. The secret key will be embedded within the algorithm, and there will be some obfuscation done to the algorithm and given to the it will be given. Like we don't require any secure hardware to implement the algorithms. So essentially, the motive is still the adversary should not be able to infer the key from the implementation. So that is a white box crypto. It is still in the consolidation phase, and maybe in future we can expect our students to explore more into the white box crypto area. And the second is we actually fit into this area. Whatever our scheme so far, we actually fit into this optimization phase, because we always what we are talking is we want the implementations to run on the hardware. So we want to make it as efficient as possible. We cannot expect the user to wait in front of an ATM machine inserting his card for a minute, because we are giving him the security. We want to, from a user perspective, we want to make it as efficient as possible. So our implementations will, our work from recent Chess 20 and Chess 21 are fitting into this software optimizations. And there are even more device-specific optimizations also, vendor-specific, ARM-based optimizations, then RISC-V-based optimizations, then x86 optimizations. There are there is some work going on in that direction as well. And very recent, from past 4-5 years, there is a interesting third dimension to the security SES research is, of course, the security models will be common across these three. Whatever countermeasure we are proposing or whatever optimization we are proposing should be secure against the probing security model. But interestingly, there are even masking compilers emerging out of the security models. It will give initial level of confidence for the vendors to take up these countermeasures and implement on them. As I mentioned, until the introduction of this compositional security, where we can say that even if we prove the individual components to be secure, we cannot say that the complete implementation, the block cipher implementation or the public key implementation is secure. But with the introduction of this compositional security, the masking compilers are really doing well, and some of the compilers, they can take an unmasked implementation and convert into a masked implementation in a particular security model. There are like randomized security model, threshold probing model, and there are like very recent add-ons to the security models which are giving more security guarantees. Like the masking compilers are developed along with the security models, which will say that we can have we can verify the security of a countermeasure, or we can optimize to some extent the security models. So these are like this is the work going on in the side channel community so far. Yeah, I'm happy to wind up the talk here, and I'll be happy to take any questions if any. You can find our papers in the seat print links. Uh, Even chess journals are also publicly accessible.
Thank you, Annapurna and Professor Vivek, for the wonderful session. Any questions from the audience?
I have a question. Hi.
Yes, sir.
So apart from this probing model where you assume that adversary have access to computations of T variables, are there any other ways in which you can model the adversary, the way they can observe the computations of intermediate variables?
Yes, sir. There is a noisy leakage model. Essentially, the adversary can observe any number of variables in when it comes to the device, but he requires his computation efforts to recover the leakage. As a prof mentioned, the observations are always noisy. So the noise keep on increasing when he wants to observe more and more number of variables. So the noisy leakage model will also be used, but the proofs in the noisy leakage model are not are as elegant as a probing leakage model.
Also, Professor Ashish, the theory community has looked into models where the adversary is given access to any efficiently computable functions of the secret key. Okay? And they also have variants where the secret could be split into, it's called a split state model, where the secret is split into two parts, and then adversaries can query and any compute efficiently computable of the one of the parts. Okay, so this is model, and then so this auxiliary input model where again, I mean, when you say efficiently computable function, I mean you need to restrict the length of the output, right? Or in the auxiliary information model, what they do is, okay, length is, usually power traces are like can run into gigabytes, right? It can be pretty big. So what is really important is this leakages should not sufficiently lower the entropy. Okay, that's the only condition. But the problem with these attacks, with these models is, okay, they could be very convenient to work with from the theoretical perspective, and they also could seem powerful and generic, right? But then the problem is the constructions are not really efficient in these models. And then it turns out that probing model is like, though may not be the best one to capture, but it looks like it's working out so far. So hence it's become like very very widely adopted in the crypto engineering community.
Okay. So I have a follow-up question. So do you also put restrictions on the computing power or the resources of the attacker, apart from the fact that he's having access to certain number of variables?
No, these things are usually the distinguishers. So that they are used in the side channel attacks. They are like information theoretic distinguishers. Okay, they are statistical. So the adversaries really assumed it to be like access to infinite computing power. So long it can only. I mean, it's kind of contradiction. So the amount of effort, what we say, the number of fault traces, increases exponentially with respect to number of shares, correct, or the masking order. But then we also, the moment we use the statistical techniques, so we expect that they should absolutely know mutual information between the intermediate variables and then the secret key. Yeah, I mean it's a bit ambiguous, but but so far it's working out.
Okay, thank you.
So Professor Prasanna has this question: information theoretic ideas like mutual information ideally should be zero between the side channel and secret should be zero. What are the latest results? I mean, there are a lot of attacks that keep on improving. So mainly statistical tests are applied. But then in the masking world, we try to make a set of intermediate variables. For the teeth order probing security, we say any T should be mutually independent of the secret. So in a way, yes, it is made sure, the countermeasure is made sure that the mutual information is zero between the set of intermediate variables and then the secret. But again, what should be the size of the threshold? it's all depend on the practical scenario. So many times the first order security enough if you really don't know if one implements a proprietary software and an adversary has no clue, then probably the first order masking itself would suffice. But if it is like profiled attack where the adversary is assumed to have a copy of the device, it has complete knowledge of the algorithms being implemented and complete knowledge of the device, so then probably one has to stretch to pretty high orders. So it all depends on the practical scenario, and these things are really learned by trial and error.
Yeah, the thing is, I think essentially, I know that in coding, yeah, I think there was this long old classic paper by from Bell Labs, this Wiley or somebody, where they proved essentially that yes, coding, cryptography, the strongest cryptography is when the mutual information is zero. And there were some results, some strong results on the strength of codes. So
By any chance, are you referring it to the one-time patch cipher?
yeah, well, the thing is, you can take the mutual information from essentially each of these is this is a MIMO noisy channel. This is basically a MIMO noisy channel with nonlinear properties. And because the power is itself a channel, measuring the power is a sensor issue, in fact. So the question is, if you can get any information about the signal and the mutual information is non-zero or exponentially or not exponentially zero, then I think there is a possibility of this actually leaking information.
See, again, the side channel physical phenomenon, okay, we may not have a very deep understanding, right? And of course, it's all related to the computation being happening, the intermediate variables manipulated, so on. So there's no question that making the physical emanation or the side channel leakage independent of secret. So what is really interesting and probably worth asking is, okay, how able is an adversary is able to exploit this physical phenomenon? Okay? We might not have.
Okay, so I think, all right, I think I get you. There were two levels of security. One is cryptographic security, where you're talking of computational complexity of decoding. The other one is information theoretic security, where even in principle, as long if the mutual information is zero, then even in principle, no matter even if you take any algorithm, even exponential in time, cannot do it,
Yeah.
because the information has no correlation with the source.
Right.
I think here that is not relevant,
Yeah.
but you may try to use that as a lower bound on the performance.
Maybe.
Yeah, I remember, I think was this, there were essentially two levels, cryptographic security and information theoretic security, with information theoretic security being the sort of higher goal, because even a exponential and exhaustive algorithm in principle cannot find it.
Oh, yeah. So other one we call it computational security. So if a
Yeah,
polynomially
you are,
bounded adversary cannot attack it, then it's computational security.
Thank you, Professor Vivek and Annapurna, for this wonderful presentation. I have a question from the coding theory point of view. So, can the existing scheme of efficient memory utilization that you have proposed be used with the schemes of masking where the error correcting codes are also used? I'm just curious about it.
No, that's an open problem. In fact, okay, so these countermeasures, they are secure against power attacks, right? Basically pre-probing attacks. It could be cache attacks or whatever. But then there are just a few years ago, there are papers where they combine side channel attacks and fault, and these schemes are badly broken. Probably in protecting against fault attacks, error correcting codes. I mean, people have investigated, but still, from the efficiency point of view, still I think there's quite a long way to go.
Okay.
And I think that can be a very nice open problem.
Okay, then actually I have one more question about this white box. Maybe if you can go back to that particular slide where you have, yeah, here. So this, I'm just curious about this white box crypto and where does this work that you have presented stand in such type of crypto system? So if you can elaborate on it, it will be interesting.
So white box crypto implementations are like the adversary is more powerful. He can even essentially is given the cipher. He can have the algorithm at hand, and he can get the intermediate variables, as many intermediate variables as possible.
To clarify on that example, so here is a way to make, for instance, AES is a symmetric cipher, right? You can make it public key. What you just need to do is publish the code, but you embed the key inside, but then you try to garble the code and then you send it out. So basically what we are doing is obfuscation. So here, adversary has complete access to the implementation. He can possibly turn off the source of randomness, right? And he can really investigate the code. So, and then, yeah, so then, but if still it remains secure, then that's really cool, right? And
Okay.
the public key crypto is going to be extremely efficient. But then the challenge is people are not able to, the theory community, crypto theory community has like strong proposals, but they are like no way near practice. And then there are like people have tried out some heuristic ways of doing it, and then all the proposals are broken so far. So it's a very hot topic, And for example, one of my favorite examples is set-top boxes. So they don't. So the communication between the satellite and the TV set-top box should be encrypted. Okay, but then how do you decrypt it? Users cannot be given the key because typically an average user may not be good at handling strong cryptographic keys, or they could possibly share it with someone else, right? Not without being they're not supposed to do, and they could possibly share it. Okay, so what they do, and it's currently being done, is embed the key. So, but then these algorithms could be proprietary, and then there are not many hacks, and then so far it's working out. But then how to make it more robust? So that's all about the white box cryptography, and it's one of the very hot topics in the crypto engineering.
Okay, that is indeed interesting. And in the simulations, if you increase that n parameter, do you still expect the order 1 results? Have you done any simulations after that? So I saw that till n is equal to 11, you have presented some results.
Yes. So the size of the table will remain as it is. The input to the PRG, whatever the true random seed to the PRG, the size of the seed will grow along with n. But it's not exponential, it's only squaring. We need to have n square to store the input seed.
I think Annapurna, it's an excellent work. I wish you good luck with your future results and the papers as well. And congratulations for the latest paper.
Thank you.
So if there are no further questions, I think, shall we end the session, Amrita?
Yes, Professor Aarti. So I would like to thank the speakers of the day, Annapurna and Professor Vivek, for this extremely wonderful session. And our session chair, Professor Aarti, for having coordinated and moderated the whole session. I would also like to thank the audience who have actively participated in a very invigorating Q&A session. So looking forward to future interactions in the Samvaad-Talk series. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.